Good morning or good afternoon, whatever the time may be that you're going to be watching this. I want to share with you something that hit my heart as I was going through social media today. I was looking through YouTube, I was looking through Facebook, and some of the things that caught my attention in this verse that we're going to be going over applies to it directly. So I was going through, and you know how you can have things on YouTube, recommended for you, things that you might like. Facebook does the same thing. It uses an algorithm to pinpoint things that you liked previously, and it kind of is like, hey, you might like this as well. And it recommends things to you. Now, Psalm 139 in Scriptures, if you could turn there, 139 kind of shows how God is intimately in touch with us. So if you turn to 139, we're just going to hit the first few verses here. It says, in verse 1, it says, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Now, unlike a program that, somebody inputted into the computer, God intimately looks at you. And he studies, we're going to get into what he knows, but he is intently looking out for different aspects, and he gets to understanding, and he knows you. In a relationship, for example, people take the time to understand, who you are, what you're about, the different things, your motives and your everyday activity. And some people gauge that, whether they're going to trust you or not. Can I trust this person? What is his motives? What is his feelings? So people do that with each other. Relationships, for example, people do that. They kind of examine, what type of person, this person, is this going to be the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, for example. So in verse 1, it says that he searched me and known me. So he searched and he knows you. What does he know? Thou knowest, verse 2, my downsitting and my uprising. So what you do each day. He is acquainted and knowing what you do on your day-to-day activity. Where you go, how you operate, when you, what your motives and everything of what you're doing. So now understandest my thoughts afar off. So before you even think it, I don't know if anybody's ever been in a relationship where your significant other can finish your statements. Can finish what you're going to say before you even say it, because they know what you're thinking. And sometimes you can even look at somebody and you can laugh because you know exactly what they're thinking at that present time. And that just shows that you're a knowledge of them. So verse 3, thou composest my path and my lying down. So those compassest, I'm horrible in pronouncing things. But I think when I look at that word, it is like a compass. Now, a compass points us north, east, south, and west. So he understands, and it says, and is acquainted with my ways. So he knows what path you're going to ultimately choose in a given situation. Because he's studied it, he knows your thoughts, from afar off. So, if you think of it, these verses stack on top of each other. So he searched, verse 1, and knows me. He is acquainted, with my up and down. He understands my thoughts afar off. So he's able to understand what direction you're going to go through. Or to go in, rather. And then verse 4, it says, for there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. So not only does he know our thoughts afar off, not only does he know what direction we're going to take, but he knows ultimately what we're going to say. Now, we don't know that ultimately when people start talking. We can guess. Sometimes we, gauge on what they're going to say based on how we know the person. You're going to say this, and sometimes we put words in people's mouths. We say, hey, this is what you're saying. And sometimes we can be wrong in people, and sometimes that gets us in trouble because we guess how the other person, what they're going to say, how they're going to approach it, because we kind of gauge with them and how their motives, and we kind of, okay, this is what direction I think, and sometimes we're fooled. But God here in this scripture in verse 139 and in verse 4, he understands what we're going to say. So verse 5, thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. So he knows what's behind us, and he knows what is before us. Now, often when you meet somebody, unless you've been in somebody's life for a long period of time, you don't know their past. You don't know what made them follow certain directions, what made their motives and what they're going to say. But if you follow along somebody throughout their life and how they've progressed through life, what things as life has taught them, you can kind of gauge on what they're going to go forward. Now again, ultimately you could be caught off guard because you're thinking that they're going to go this way based on their past, based on what their goal ultimately is. But we're fooled sometimes with people, but we can see that God is not. And then verse 6, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. To be able to understand somebody so intimately, it's hard for us to understand. Now we can understand Facebook, we can understand YouTube because we choose different things. It's an algorithm. We understand that, well, if I like this video, this other video that has something similar is going to come along our way. We know that if you're around like-minded people, if you're around people that follow certain beliefs, certain faiths, we can understand and we can kind of gauge how other people. But we don't know somebody that intimately as God knows us. Now, if you read through and you see this more, I guess, personal, if you look at the beginning how it starts off, it says, thou hast searched me and know me. So we can see that these verses are personal. So God knows me, but as you're reading these verses and understanding what the Bible is saying, he understands you too. And anybody else in this whole entire world that understands God knows each individually the same. And if you take that into context and knowing everybody that intimately, by the time you get down to verse 6, you can say the same thing. Such knowledge is too wonderful to me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. Because we don't know, even ourselves most of the time, what we're going to say, what direction we're going to take, and even our thoughts can fool us. So God understands us that so intimately, not just us, but everybody as well. So when I pause to remember that, I can come to God and I can come to Him in prayer. I can come to Him openly, and I can come to Him in sadness and anger and all of these feelings because He understands me. He understands what I'm going through, understands what the words that I am, the stumbling of my mouth. He understands all of that because He is acquainted with me. And my prayer for you, I always try to end with a prayer. My prayer for you is to understand that God knows you. There's a lot of people in this world they don't understand me. They judge me. They all these things, but understand that God knows you, and you can come to Him with anything and everything because He knows you. And that's my prayer, that you would get to know that God knows you more intimately than often what we give Him credit for. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and I hope you have a good day.